So we're going to venture inwards to our first cobbler's pose of the day, maybe for you. You want to have your bolster so it's on some height, and the height is important that you have the blanket at the back in that quarter fold. I have practiced recently in some teachings with the blanket this way, and I find that it's eventually a little nagging on my lower back. And since my low back is just doing great, I'd rather not get anywhere into that zone. So this offers some vertebral kind of arch, but you could try, that would be more of a chest opener if your blanket was lengthwise. So when you sit in front of your bolster, I'm kind of a little bit tilted here because I want you to see the belting. You're going to have your belt in a large loop around you, and the large loop is the key. So kind of manage your buckling. And when you have that belt kind of, the buckle's kind of something you can slide and make it longer or shorter. But I want you to actually put the belt so it's around your, low waist. And then you're going to actually twist it one time. So I got it in the loop, right? My feet are together. You can put your blocks under your legs now. And then you're going to turn it. So it's twisted, okay? Now you're sitting up sacrum to the edge of the bolster. You're going to scoop up the feet and then loosen up the belt so it goes low on the back, on the bum, right? So it's at the eyebrows of the buttocks. And then as you tighten up the belt, get the buckle near you. Yeah, even though this is recording, if you have trouble seeing me at any time through the sequence, I sometimes veer one direction or the other, just, make some awareness looks so that we know you need some help at visual cues, and I'll change, but I think we're okay. Are we good, Floyd? You see me? We okay? Okay. So place the blocks under your legs and lift up the thighs as if you're kind of butterflying the legs. So a little butterfly, lift and drop, and see what it feels like as they flutter. Fluttering cobbler's pose. And now as you center back, you might push down onto your bolster and then alleviate the lower back by feeling that rounded shape in your spine. And I imagine you can bring your feet closer. That's sometimes the case. I'm not peering in at you. I don't mean that. But you might lower your head back first and then get a little bit of awareness centering around your legs, because my legs don't like the blocks pushing into them. But you might tighten the belt. You might pull on the belt to get your feet a little closer. And I want you to adjust this so that your sensations that are around the rear, that it just feels like it's kind of a very centered piece of your existence, your rear in this position. It's kind of nice because it's not a position on the rear that's like when you're sitting in a chair and you have postural patterns that come up that are hard to fix, right? This is a nice postural pattern. So it's not realistic to be in this pattern all day, but at this moment we have our knees supported, right? Nothing too stretchy in the flexibility of your thighs. And then we'll add sand so that we can focus on strengthening the diaphragm. So my sand is going right below the sternum, and it may go a little lower depending on your comfort level. And you might push your feet a little forward. You might put your blocks lower. Release your arms and feel them kind of flutter back. And as you motion both of the arms back, I kind of call this motating, right? So you're moving, you're feeling the reaction of movement, and then clutch onto either your forearms or your elbows, either one that seems to be easily touched to with your hands. And rather than judging that you have to get your elbows, maybe your forearms are nice to hold. And get a feel where you hold, how it responds in your wrists, right? So if I clutch my elbows, it's nice because it pulls the bone from the elbow to the wrist to some length. But if I clutch around the forearms a little bit, it's softer for my hand. Let your eyes close. They might flutter a bit. I know that the tendency to look and see is consistent, but perhaps you find an ability to center for even a moment or two and relate to your breathing and feel where that experience of inhale is actually lifting the sand. Right, so the inhale piece is an actual motion, and the exhale piece is to relax the stomach. But interestingly enough, the diaphragm, as the muscle is working, I want you to relax your grip on the arms and then let your arms release by your sides. As the diaphragm is working, it's going downstream on your inhale with the belly lifting and ascending. And then on the exhale, right, there's a descent of the abdomen down towards the floor. So work on that proper balance of the clear awareness of your abdomen, doming on the inhale with the diaphragm moving down. It's kind of on the descent, but it's also ascending as far as the stomach appearance. And as the exhalation current softens the core, it also centers the diaphragm motion back up to the base of the heart. So explore centering yourself in your practice. Let the shoulders squeeze back a little bit towards your bolster. Inhaling for 4. Out breath for 5. Trace the awareness in the legs. And if the bound ankle, which is what it is with the belt, it's bound. If there is any discomfort there, you can always unbuckle and not have a belt. It's not required. The belt brings us into a quieting of the body, right? It brings some calming to the nervous system. But if it's doing the alternate experience for you right now, you can change that. And the crossing of the belt is a little more defining on your ankle band and the back of the pelvis. So we start with the most centered possibility that we can. So let's take a moment here just to kind of notice where your legs motion if they're in balance. And we're going to take a second kind of assessment on the leg and the hip balance. So remove the sand and place the blocks so they're just off to the side yard a little bit, off of the sides of the legs. And then when you're moving your knees up, you're going to reach for the buckle and you're going to release the belt, slide it off the legs. And actually, let's take it off of the whole back of the pelvis too. Try to see if you can cleverly slide it away. And as your feet find their soles, we're going to push down. In fact, the careful way of doing this would be we move our blanket just a little bit back. It might slide off your bolster and you might lose it, but make sure you could still grab it when we need it again. But this way our cervical spine, right, the cervical vertebrae is not in this pushing rounded column. It has a tiny bit of its natural curve, but it's not excessive. And as I push down into both feet, we're going to lift up our hips and I want you to tuck a block underneath. Okay, so you're kind of sitting on the block, the back of your pelvis. I can get a feel where I like my bolster to be a little bit closer to the block, or I can push it up. But we all kind of find the things that we do for a little bit more support. And now, of course, your block could be higher. That's true. But the flat block, it just feels like, even though it's the same amount of space, width-wise, if I turned it up the next height, it just feels a little more established for my rear. So when we put a sandbag on the front of the hip bones, you're going to feel your feet and kind of let the toes scrunch and stretch forward. So you're walking your feet forward, but you're actually scrunching the toes to stretch out your toes, work your toe muscles. And then as you land closer to your heel, you're gonna push, make a line in your mat. Start to make some reasons to clean a yoga mat today. Really kind of push out your heels, scrub your mat. And then once you have that sand on, notice the back has to compensate a little bit for that. The knees might feel some issue, so you might step your feet a little wider. That would be preferred versus feeling some knee issues. And then take your belt, hold on to it. I guess the word take means use your hands, but interesting things we learn in time and our ways of talking. But as you hold your belt, I want you to look to your belt and kind of notice your elbow bending, your elbows. And then as you lift up straight to the ceiling, can you stretch your hands out wider on your belt already and feel where there is some stimulation in your lower ribs? So one thing you might notice here, if I put the belt a little forward, it's kind of like no lower rib awareness there. But once I start to move the belt over my face and then gradually behind you, feel where the arms are reaching. I know your legs feel a little vulnerable in this position too. But as you reach back with the handling of your belt, you might slide your hands out and work with reaching the ribs wide and really letting your circulation expand in your chest. You might need to let your head rock a little side to side. You might not believe it's possible. Nod your head. But as the arms sort of kind of dwindle down from their excitement about holding the belt, it's going to happen at some point, feel where your elbows are lowering down. I noticed my blanket for a moment on one arm, but not on the other. So your range of motion in each pec is different for most of us. And as the arms continue that thorough investigation of the front spine, the chest muscles, you might want to bring your feet a little closer together if that's possible. These little moves with the bones can change the feeling in your spine or your legs. They are sort of connected. Okay, and then get a feel here as the arms start to bring the belt back over your chest, straight towards the ceiling. Inhale, belly full, and then exhalation. Bring your arms back overhead and let go of your belt. Stretch your hands, open, and then relax your arms down by your sides. And let this be organic, how you slide your feet back in towards your seat, your knees point up, and take a few moments just to feel how your back muscles respond to getting out of that shape. Do they feel better, relieved? Was it a strain in your back just to work the back muscles that way? And as I dawdle my focus on my feet, I want you to push down into your feet and feel the weight of the sand. I'm not asking you to do a pelvic tilt with your sand on your pelvis, but I want you to feel right? You feel your rear onto the block. I want you to notice, if you do try that, how much coordination that takes in this whole medley of core muscles. Okay? All right, we're not going to do a CrossFit training session here with the sand on our core, but Can you push down into your feet? Try to lift the toes and just feel if you lift the pelvis like a tiny bit up from the back, from the block. Notice, can you do a tiny bit of a lift? You don't have to go all the way off of the block. No requirement. Okay, now we'll first remove the sand. That seems like the kind thing to do. Sand off, and as you send off the sand, you're going to slide the block out and grab a ball. If you don't have a ball, grab a block. Lower down the back of the pelvis so it's just next to the bolster. And once your pelvis is centered on that contour, let's get our blanket actually from behind us and place that blanket under your head. You could actually put the ball between the knees, right, to have a little bit of squeeze, knee squeeze. Okay, so I place the ball next to the upper outer left thigh and then put the right foot to the left knee. Cross it. So it's a cross pattern. We've done this multiple zillions of times. Okay, so when you put that ball, I want you to really, if you have a ball, you're going to kind of push it in. So it's almost kind of annoying. It's kind of stuck there and it's almost pushing you a little bit right. So you're going to lean your body weight on that ball. Okay, if you've got a block, just let the block be beside your leg. And if it's a block, right, you would put it right here and I lean into it. You can't really make the block soft, right? But a foam block is nice to have for that. Reach your left hand to the right knee. And when you do hold to that leg, I want you just to notice the hold of the leg first, the connection to the knee. And as you're guiding your legs to that kind of crossing the angle, feel the back of the pelvis, feel the little swerviness of your right hip, right? It's a little bit up. And then as you guide your hand to hold onto that right leg, you're either guiding it towards you, but I'm not encouraging you to pull it across towards the left. The only thing that's going to the left is the impact on the ball or the block and you're leaning into it. And there's no goal to get the foot on the floor, but some people do. It depends on your leg length. It depends on your range of motion. I like to stay where it's somewhere between, it's strategically, right, a stabilizing position for my hip, right? So strategically playing on the hip. Right arm stretches back and feel when the arm is in motion or rotating and your eyes center and close. I don't know if you center your eyes vision-wise and then close, or if you just randomly close them without centering. Take a few moments here. And it's always welcome to explore it a little bit. So maybe you're on the side of your left foot a little more in the next few moments. And maybe you're stretching the ankle a tiny bit that way. See what gives you a little suppleness in your right hip. It's all an exploration, right? It's a movement exploration. Now remove the hand from the knee and let it lower down, lower the right arm down besides you. And as you shift your legs back to the center line, as we start to uncross, I want you to feel that right knee motion open, still hooked to the left leg. And then put that right foot down and the left foot sole to sole, take the ball away. And as you bring your knees back to that Baddha Konasana, kind of feel without the blocks how that is responding from hip to hip. If it's a little different detail on one side than the other. I think the key here is to kind of exhale your hips, you know, even though it might be interpreted that they're tense or they're shaking a bit. See if you can like let the body exhale, the knees wide. And then as you start to guide your right knee and it's pointing back up, the left foot hooks up over towards that right knee. And then you shift the legs towards the right. You get a ball, place it besides the upper outer right thigh. As you tilt and you reach to that left knee, let this medley of motion really go slow so that you're guiding it without, oh, I got the pose, I got the shape that's been sort of mentioned. But no, it's more of, okay, I find the offering of the parts, and then maybe 75% computes for you. And I mean, everybody's got a different response to the cues. And if it doesn't work with your joints, then you might have to back off or respond differently with the handling of your knee. So if I was to go lower on my leg, like to reach below the actual knee itself and feel, so I'm near the holding and kind of pushing into my shin and reaching on the outer side where it feels like it's tight. That's not a bad idea either. It's kind of nice to hold there too. So left arm reaches back and we go into the shape. And we feel where the waistband elongates. Good. Breathing only helps. And as you're within the actual hip crossover, there's many hip crossover poses. So there's probably 3 different ones I like to lead through. Feel how your right foot is responding, the outer bones of that foot. Feel where the weight is onto that ball. It's a really significant piece. And you do want to let the body weight entirely smush it. Smush a ball. Breathing, feel that corridor of the breath. Maybe it's contained in the center. I mean, where else are you going to focus on the movement of the breath? But it lingers, out into the extremities. Not as much as the pose does, but let's find the truth in that one, huh? So feel where your position is with your hand on the leg, okay? So if it is up at the knee, and that's pretty good, it's sometimes a little critical in the hip that way. And if there's any kind of weirdness going on in your knee with the hold, then you move it down a little bit farther away from the actual knee itself. Now with that left arm motioning back out and down, so kind of the range of your arm motion is only going to go out and down. Kind of think about it, you do this pose and go into the midline. So it's nice to kind of get your basic awareness patterns in your poses, and then, I don't know, you kind of have to re-posture yourself at some point in life. It's a nice idea to try it again. So as I let go of my leg grip, I'm going to come back to that reclining Baddha Konasana. Okay, feet together, knees out, and perhaps you get a feel of some balance. And if it's not, you slide your feet farther downwards. You just move them down. Now feel once your knees are motioning back towards up, the feet slide, you're going to bring the feet over to the right side of your mat, and you're going to launch your way towards the side sage. Now we are going to medley with side sage, cat-cow, dog pose today. So I want you to get a feel of how your lower levers support you. So I want you to walk your feet to the right, as mentioned, and I'm going to be using a ball to balance my legs on this one coming up. But when you roll to your left, try to push into your side of your left thigh and your hip. And then when you come up, when you come over to your hip, you're going to move your bolster, just kind of tug it, and then turn it so it's across your mat. And then once you start to lean in, you would get a ball or block down by the legs, but the blankets, you might have to kind of get up on your bolster bit here to push your blankets on the other side around. You can still see me fine. Okay, so we got our blankets in such a condition that when I put my block on the other side of town there, then I have a healthy dose of support. It's kind of funny how we put our props so that they are, it's like an obstacle course for your body to layer itself through. Okay, so when I'm moving down this time today, I'm going to work on going right into the side, so right into the ribs themselves. If you like these patterns where you kind of twist and then reach, that's okay. Have your sand nearby, have a ball on the inside of that right leg or a block or nothing if you don't want support, that's okay. But if your bolster's starting to shift with your pushing, get it back to right where it should be, right across. So you want to get that aligned. And then you align yourself on that contour of your bolster. If you have a round bolster at home, in addition to your flat one, didn't mention it, but this would be a good place for a round bolster. If you want to go switch it out. Then you get a different kind of rib, a different hit on the ribs. It doesn't hit your ribs, but a different circulation. So when I put the sand on my side bones and I lean down to the left, it feels like I'm going to the floor, not a certain direction. Everything's kind of floorward, going forward. Hand reaches either over to the block, or maybe you like to touch down to the floor or turn the block a little lower. Be certain that when the arm is either over or it's flowing, that the inner lining of that arm piece that touches to the shoulder, if it feels like it's pinching, then it's not a good motion, right? So we don't want to start feeling pinching and tightening, even though your reach is actually a little bit more of a closed chain right on that right pit, right on the front to the collarbone. It's a little more of a closed chain. So open up the pit, the armpit chest, and let the body sink. Sinking, surrendering, closing eyes. Trust that we'll be here a good minute, so we know that we can rely on time to provide us with the proper amount of consideration, right, for the joints, the muscles, the complex of the tissues to hydrate well. So how much air you get in the lungs is dependent on the movement of the ribs. And feel where the weight of your head relaxes into the blankets. And now as we begin the process of transitioning to hands and knees, it is going to be a rotating inwards, right? And it's a nice branching of a full body selection of movements when we do combine these in between the sides. So please go to what feels considerate for you. So when you move your sand and you find that with you don't have sand, you can actually move a little bit easier into the direction of the floor. And you turn, you might try, this is an idea that's kind of interesting for the pelvis, and the coordination. So I'm going to be on all fours, but I'm going to put a ball, or you could be a block between the thighs, and it would be kind of lower, but not too low. It's not going to be right at the floor. It's got to be a little bit up on between the thighs so that you have something to kind of squeeze into. And it might be a finding for you that's relatively interesting also on your knees, okay? So we'll keep it so simple. We're not changing the props around too much. We're just working in between the props. So I've got my hands open. If this is completely not accommodating to you, you can also do the same patterns, right, with your elbows on your blocks. So you can move your blankets and you could put your blocks on the floor like so, and put your elbows to the blocks and do the same patterns, okay? So feel free to do either of these options, okay? So as you round your back, and you could put blankets under your knees if you need, round your back, chin to chest, and inhale, arching, okay? Exhale, rounding. Try to come right into the sequence of movement of the spine. Inhale, arching, okay? If you're onto the elbows, you continue with that. If you're on the hands, you keep the fingers wide, okay? So with the arching pattern, it does have a little bit more ribbon-like effect with the arms straight, but if it hurts your wrist, then you don't entertain that one. Now, this ball between the leg path is somewhat challenging. So what the challenge will be is as you hook your toes under, and whether you're on your elbows or you're on your hands, you lift up the knees and you try to keep that ball. If it falls out, just let it go. But you want to try to squeeze into the ball, but not with your hands, with the legs. And as your head lowers down towards the floor, of course, it's not going to go up to the ceiling. At this point, it goes downwards. It's a downwards dog. Try to lift up your heels, and no matter what, if you're on elbows or hands, and lower the heels back down. Take that heel lift a few times. Lift and lower back down. Okay, now this last time you're going to lower your knees. You're going to remove the ball. It's no good for the moment. You're going to pick up the knees one more time and step your feet out almost to the width of your mat and reach your sitting bones back, your heel bones down, and keep that going. And feel that circulation reach through the arms. And bend your knees, walk your feet forward towards your bolster, walk your hands back on the bolster. And now there's no wrist, anything going on. But as the less risk in the wrists, you're going to kind of flump downward. So I want you to let your head make some space of relaxing the neck. And surrender the arms, whether you hold your elbows or you let the arms dangle, okay? Now, when the arms are in that dangling pattern, you're gonna lift up your sitting bones and let the weight of your head hang. So keep in mind, you could hold your elbows, you can dangle the arms, you could reach the hands to the bolster. Some people like that directional path of reaching. And if the weight of your head is relaxing, that spine has a very natural extension. But it's interesting, it's extension and it's flexion at the same time for your back. Now we come back forward, or we actually don't come back. We go forwards with our hands, walk our feet back, and then lower down the knees, and then set up for your second right hip down side stage, okay? So when you put your body into this version on the second side, lean down and then coordinate the distribution of weight so that the leg has support on the inside of the left thigh. Feel the thigh in the front trying to open. Now I'll give you a little bit of a heads up, unless you want to create the plan of the class. We could do everyone can decide where they go with the next series, but what I'm going to version us into is we're going to stay with this left side for a little bit today. So I want you to set it up with this left side. I'm going to have a little strain to kind of see where we're at looking over. But you don't need a strain to get this. But when you lean into it, you want to make sure your blankets are in enough height for you so you are honestly just comfortable. You might need a bunch up when your blankets turn a little bit higher. But when you're lengthening through that left arm, feel where the reach is through that side and reach over. If you've got a block, find it with the hand and touch down. And be courteous with the control of your breath in relationship to your sandbag. All right, now my sand is pretty low on my rib cage, so I'm not going to do a lot of breath encounter with my sand this way. If I want to, I can try to move it a little higher up. I'll catch up with the arm in a few moments, right, when I move it back, but get that field of rotation in the pelvis, in the ribs, and extend. Okay, right arm is between the bolster and the blankets. Left arm is over. Let your eyes close. Let's give ourselves about another bit of time where we can navigate this side band of reaching. We're going to be studying the left side in pieces coming up here. Yeah, is there any place in your body that's not quite committed to letting go? Is there something that grips? Is the shoulder? If you need to move off of that block, you can do that. You can move your arm open. You can move your arm down towards the right arm. Now only do what feels like it's therapeutic, right? That's important to notice. Like, does this feel therapeutic, or is it maybe challenging, but I can feel like it's proper motion. Important to notice. Okay, so feel the weight of the pelvis, the opportunity to weave through the back of the pelvis, through the spine, to the ribs, the chest, kind of a full body practice in each of the stages and some of the poses. You can kind of scan. There might be some dormant spaces on this one, like the feet a little bit. But everything has something to involve itself. So what I want to do to keep us kind of not getting too sleepy with it, actually, so you've got a little bit of a thread of idea in your body that you're going to continue into right now. So we have this length going on in the side. So all of us have practiced in this group for a while. So when we do reclining, we did a hip crossover before, but this is kind of what most of us consider a true hip crossover. It's not just the dissecting from the hip down through the half of the leg. It's also got some upper body components. So let's start to move actually your block doesn't have to move right now, I guess, but you'll move your sand off of your side, and I don't know if it does. You're going to bring your left knee towards your right, and when you roll into the right side, you're actually going to come up and turn. Pardon me for turning away. You're going to move your bolster to the right side of your mat and take a blanket off and then lower down. And I'd have your ball nearby just in extra case. And then when you lower down onto your blanket under your head, you're flat on the back space. There's nothing under your back. Okay, so take a ball or a block, place it between the thighs, and scoot your feet a little bit downward so you have your experience of your legs squeezing in. Now, if this is like, I don't feel that it can actually squeeze that object, ball or block, you might have to move it up between the knees. You might need to bring your knees into your chest a little bit and kind of make sure it's stuck there. Now, those little nubs on it are quite helpful. The year of the nubby circular object on the news. Okay, so we squeeze into the ball and notice the hips, the buttocks, and those areas kind of squish in this position. They kind of clamor for muscular vibration. There's a lot of muscular vibe in this position. So squeeze into the ball and see if you can feel your feet, toes are away from you. They're not trying to turn in at all. Okay. Now, when you lift up your rear off the ground, it almost feels like it was meant to get it off the floor in that position. Didn't feel very good squeezing the ball and having your seat down. So lift up and then lower down. Slide your feet closer to your seat, closer in towards your center of gravity. Lift up the hips, okay? Hands on the floor, palms down, elbows get a feeling of relaxing, and then lower down. Now, when we did cat-cow, right, it's a different motion of the spine because we can actually push parts of the spine and mobilize them. Right now, they're flat on the back, so it's a different backing behind them. But when you lift up this next time, I want you to lift up your heels. And as you push down through the balls of the feet, just let your sense of your, kind of as if there's something at your tailbone, and it's just encouraging you to keep the hips up. Don't drop the hips right now. You still have some life force. Okay, now the arms go overhead. Notice if that helps at all. Inhale. Yeah, that's gotta help. And then exhale, lower the spine. Tuck your knees into your chest. Remove the ball. And then let's lower the right leg straight-ish down. Cross the left leg to the bolster. Tuck the ball into the sacrum. And then add a sandbag to the outer left leg. Nothing's required. You don't have to put sand on your leg if you don't want to. If there's somebody around that can help do that, that's nice. But when you add that layer of weight, feel where you can put the weight so it feels like, oh, it's kind of comforting. Not that it's going to drain your energy, because you got a little bit of time left here. Okay. So we got to keep that zest for doing this going. So I have the hip in this hydrating, this pack to hydrate it. So as the left arm opens, you turn your head to the left. And you let your eyes relax. You get a feeling of this counter spin of the upper ribs, right? It's not a lower rib spin. The lower ribs are going the other direction, right? So let your arms feel their open quality on both sides. If you got props in your way, but you're okay with it, you might accommodate your arm on top of another blanket. That's okay. Yeah, let's say your left shoulder doesn't come down and this is tough for you. I would put a blanket under the left arm or maybe a towel. If the blanket under the arm makes your arm go higher and you're not stretching it open, then that's a counterproductive idea. So sometimes being at home doing your practice is kind of nice because you can get like towels. You can have a whole little prop set up, right? Of small towels, medium-sized towels, eye pillows, hot packs, ice packs, and then feel where your arm is in the relationship to ease the chest circulation right now. Let your eyes relax. Even if that was already said, try it again. And the weight of your leg on the bolster, it's really important here to be careful that it's comfortable on the bolster. So maybe you need another blanket under the leg. At this point, you have all these towels and blankets for this pose. You know, we're going to stay with the side sheath of the left leg as the focus. Now, I don't know if working on your memory and your practice is necessarily the most helpful for us, but sometimes it can be challenging. Like, what did I do 5 minutes ago? But I think it'll be helpful to kind of work with that right now. So we did side sage. We did bridge pose, I guess, in between. But we had the legs, so I don't want you to repeat this or you watch it, but I don't want you to, all right, listen to it. You don't have to get up and look at your screen. But your leg was swinging back right in the sage pose. So it's now, from bridge, it balanced out the hip, and then we crossed it over and have a little memory of that motion, right? So I always find that really interesting. If you've done any kind of learning of movement, hydrating movement practices, this kind of leg swing is important, how it works out of the back of the pelvis. So what I want you to do is actually get the sand off of that leg, and be sure you're sand free on your left leg, and feel when you hold onto the leg with the right hand, okay? And then when you let go of the leg, that was a millisecond that you got to do that. I want you to try to let that left leg go a little farther, maybe a tiny bit farther over towards the right. Nothing that's going to hurt you. It's not overstretching. If you don't want to practice that, it's okay. But feel the leg on the bolster still. It's like still touching. Now move the ball just a little bit away. And then as you slide the left leg down, I want you to roll onto the back of the pelvis, and then you're going to swing the right leg over to the left side. I hope you got some space. It's always good to get as much space as you can. If you knock over towards a couch leg or whatever, then try not to get stuck under it. But as your leg swings over to the other side, then you're going to feel like the similar zone you were just stretching, okay? Come back to the first side. This is like modern dance class. This is a warm-up. And then go back to that one we just did where we swung over to the left. This is only a few seconds of class, so you'll be glad to know. Now, when you come back in center, I want you to move your bolster. I mean, I'm not going to move it to the left because you won't be able to see what I'm doing, but you can move it to your left if you want, because we'll be going there. But you're going to windshield wiper your knees now. So your feet are as wide as your mat, but no wider. If it goes too wide, it can be a little bit difficult on the knee joint. But if it's too close in with your feet, it can be the same way. So you want to get a feel when you have this play of movement in your legs. It's also stretching your IT band a little bit, okay? But if I bring my knees to one side and hold it too long, it kind of squeezes in your sacrum. So you might want to notice here just like, oh, okay, I want to just be free to swing the knees side to side. No big deal. My knees go left, my head turns right. Keep it in flow. Now let this be about the flow of movement in the waistband. Okay. Now when you come back in center, your feet are a little farther out. Now have your feet a little closer in than the sides of your mat. I know all mats are different. Some are wide and some are a little bit more narrow. But for the most cases, it's wider than hips distance right now. Feel your feet as parallel as you can tell, and then lift up your hips in bridge pose. It's kind of a comfy bridge because there's no arm focus, there's no exact arm instruction. It's just wherever they are. Now, when you're lifting up and you clamor for glute control, now when you lower your spine down, I want you to scoop the tailbone and then lengthen all the way down. Feel a little tension in your tummy to get there, like you've got to do a little tummy control to get there. And then carefully feet together, hands beside your hips. Feet really close. They got to be kind of touching as much as the bones could touch on the inside line of the feet. And then you're going to push into your hands. What might be nice for you to do the stomach strengthening work is to be sure you got a blanket under your head. Be sure your hands are pushing down besides you as much as your arm can be there. And then you're going to try to pop the knees in. Won't pop your knees, but bring your knees in towards your core and lift your legs straight up. Okay. Now, hands are pressing. I'm going to shift my legs forwards. This is not swinging the legs. It's moving forward purposely. And back up. Inhale. Exhale, legs from 90 degrees to 60. Inhale, up. And exhale. Now avoid controlling your stomach in any sort of formula that you think it looks pretty. I want you just to simply feel the awareness of the legs in one unit. This is something you could do with the legs bound, right? You could put a belt around your legs and do this exercise for the core. It could be done. I'm just making this less time than that. But when you do the last one, I want you to feel what is your limit, but you can feel your rear, right? You can feel the upper back barrier of the rear. And then I want you to notice when you shift, you're going to bring your knees to your chest, hold the sides of the legs or the feet to happy baby pose. Release the back, rock a little side to side. Rockabye baby. And then where the back gets that layer of touch, right? Your touch is through your body touching the floor, rocking side to side. Now, when you hold onto your feet, you have your spine centered. Take a few specific moments feeling the knees. And it's kind of nice to notice this can be really knee happy pose. Now, as you shift to the second hip crossover, this side will feel shorter in duration because we do a lot of swinging motions in between after the first side. So we're not cheating ourselves on the second side with the timing. I want you to know I've kind of put it all on this one, this mid pattern of movement. So as you resist this with your feet and then relax the grip, soften through the knees, lower the feet down first, and then if your bolster's over on the left, well, you're ready to go. Okay, so how do we get into this side? All right, so we get the feel. Last time we did some bridge first, but this time we're going to go left leg down. Okay, now when you bring your right knee in, I know some of us will just slap the leg on over to the side, you know, kind of like it's an exercise, like if your knee was going to your elbow or something. So scoot yourself a little to the right side of your mat, make things good. And then as the left leg is going down and extending, you're going to cross the right thigh and feel the muscles that you just worked with this pose, right? 90-degree angles. Okay, so 90, 60, 90, 40 is how that is. So when you cross over, I want you to feel that leg on the top leg, the reaching leg, move a little downstream and then cross to the bolster and then get the ball to the sacrum. Okay. I think we're still with us. We're all still here. All right. I haven't lost anybody yet. So maybe a little bit here and there. Put the sand on that outer leg. And as the ball is centered to the sacrum, you might find that one side is different agreement with the ball. You know, part of it's your mobility. It changes from one side to the next with the interchange of exercises. So as we move the right arm open, work to get that back of the right shoulder down. And moving the shoulder into the spine is not as important on this pose as it is on others. So I'm more encouraged if you can keep the arms stretching open. And as your head turns to the right, roll the back of the head to the right. Send the left arm out. Yeah, body weight is important to experience its weights and its kind of ability to hydrate through the hip tissue, through the side of the spine. And with that breath, filling the lungs and empty the lungs. Yeah, refining your alignment with your own inner guidance and noticing if there's something that you can selectively shift that might help you. Maybe it's to move the sand soon, and maybe it's to feel the brain turn to the right. Give a few moments here. Okay, now as we are in this motion of the back muscles, I want to include some pose patterns with the bolster under our feet. So we will turn the head back center and move the ball first. And as you place the sand off to the side, what you'll do is take last time we did a little bit of this movement of that leg, how that swing. So feel that right leg reach over towards the bolster. And you might do a little bit of that sway back and forth, just kind of swing the left leg over to the right. And so when you're shifting, you're trying to get the back into this kind of kickstart of its direction into your hip joint, kind of swing the knee. Now bring your bolster. So I have to kind of get close with it, with my legs kind of controlling it. Now be a little careful pushing your feet out really wide on touching the sides and the knee jam. So you might scoot it down so it's at the base of your structure. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to scoot my heels on the other side. This can be kind of nice. You can jam the bolster from your rear to your heels and then put your heels on the other side and kind of feel that balance in your lower back. And then once your feet are on top of the bolster, it's kind of like back relief 101 right there. This is like it. You can just use that right there and then eventually bring your knees in. Now we'll take a few bridge flows, draw bridges before we come up to sitting. So I want you to feel where your legs are in connection to your feet. And then as you're moving your hips to lift, can you lift up your hips, but also work with the programming. It's nice to do bridge with bolster, isn't it? After having no bolster for your bridge pose. You'll notice this circulation in your neck changes a bit, right? So the blanket is good for some people. It's not good for everybody. So you've got to check that out. Does it feel too jammed? Do you like that? Stretching your neck. It's up to you. Okay. Now, when you have your hands on the sides of the hips, at the iliac, at that bone, you're on that side. So hold on. So the hands just hold the sides of the hips. It's like, got my hips, got them. So when you lift up and that support is there, I want you to lower the spine down, but keep the handling of the side of the hips. Just keep holding on to that. Inhale and exhale, lift back up. It's like you're trying to be a little bit of a coach here. And as you lower down, and last time when you lift up, of course your arms could go overhead. That's always fun. And feel where that reach is, but feel the heels And instead of stamping them down and making it harder on yourself, feel when the relaxation of the glutes happens, and then naturally the hips lower down and go slow. So you're at the final lowering and bring your arms up. Hold on so that your back of your pelvis and your glutes are working in tandem. And then as you lower down, this whole back area, we're going to stretch it completely. So when you bring your knees in, I want you to take, well, where is your blocks, right? You got blocks somewhere, I'm sure. You're going to put your feet on the bolster again. I didn't think we did feet on bolster again, but one more time. Lift up your hips, put a block under your pelvis, and then bring your legs both up. Okay. We are doing legs up the wall at the end, but this is just so our legs get this version before we come up and sit. So I want you to feel where the legs are just lifted, right? You don't have to strive and like stretch the hamstrings a certain way. They're draining out through the legs right now. Evening. You could have your block higher, take it up a notch if you want. If this feels just fine, there's no reason to go to a different level with the height. This can be as advanced as a level, and bring the legs a little forwards so that you are strengthening your core. If I'm not observing the actual alignment, and I think this is where I should be, if I look to how it is on a screen, it's incorrect. So there's some goodness to these things. I go, oh, this feels a little challenging, but it's actually the most correct way I can have the legs is so they're vertical. Maybe they're not, but I think they're right. So hands are down and relaxing. Feel the arms so that they're either down by your sides, lower towards the bolster, or they're out to cactus. You choose. Let the legs be still, unless they're shaking. That's another issue. But let the legs stay in a rather compact frame together. And then study the scan of circulation through the thighs, up into the roots of the hip. And feeling those hip roots, this is important. So that the top of the legs, which is not the top of your pose right now, it's your feet, right? If you were just to look in space, that's the top of the pose. But your hips, right, have these roots that you're working on right now, because they're going to be the center of gravity when we go forward. Now let the feet separate so you have a little bit of parting, but keep the feet relaxed, pretty comfy. For a few more moments, there's no weight on your feet at all. Your feet aren't having to walk you around right now, carry you. They're just cozy. Now, as you bend through the knees, can you keep that awareness of your feet that you just collected when the feet were up? We'll come back to that in a bit. Lower down, lift up the hips, and then as we come up, we're going to actually come up into wide angle, Upavista Konasana. So when you lower your spine, wide angle is this pose, but it's seated, right? It's the feet are wide, but also the leg span is wide. So if I'm like this, I don't have my belt on my feet, but it's like, oh, okay, I get that in my back. That's what I want my back to be when I'm directionally in the next version. So when you bring their legs in and you roll up to sitting, you're going to slide your body weight back. And if it feels kind of nice to be on your bolster for a few, just stay with that. I think we'll go one blanket under our seat for this final pattern. Let's say you scoot back and you take a seat on your blanket and you go, well, it's hard for me to sit up or I round my back, then you need two blankets. Okay, just take them, right? Take the props you need. That's really important. So when I move my legs to a wide stance, and I like to keep it so it's that language, you know, I want the language to be like comfortable. And so it's like a stance. So it's not, it's like when the legs are in that version, it's a stance that we take with the back of the pelvis. So that imprint on your back might stay for a few seconds, but when you lift up your bolster, it's sort of helpful to have this versus this version, okay, versus this version. You know, so try the version with the bolster up. You might use blocks under your knees, you know, under the backs of your thighs, right above the knees. That can be kind of nice. Not required, but it could be cozier on your back, easier on your legs. I suppose those balls would be nice if you had two of them because it's not as harsh as a block. But it doesn't allow you to hyperextend. So when you lean forwards, can you remember that imprint on your back and lengthen? We're going to be simple in this final stretch of the practice. So I want you to just notice the simplicity here of the arms. Now you can visualize, let's say your arms are wide, right? You wouldn't have a center of connection in your spine. It would be too frantic, you know. Even my cat wouldn't want to do that probably. You want to have something that's connecting closer and then the other parts can be moving out. So when you lean forwards with an extremity situation, and as you go to your edge, which is like, it probably was found pretty fast. I know some might find they want to have no blocks and then go forward and put the bolster on the floor and those things. You can do that. There's no stopping you from that. I can't stop you from that pattern. Some might want to put the body to a little more forward, a little more forward. So feel your way into it. Okay, now as you lower your bolster and we take the legs to a hip opener. So I'm showing the most basic one first. Okay, this is, if you're not doing pigeon, you will take your right foot on top of the bolster, on top. You can put sand on the right leg, right, into the ankle ball. You could be here. You can do both these poses actually, if you want to do a little bit of each. If you have the ball, you put it maybe under the left knee, but if the knee touches down, you don't need the ball. Okay, so this is version A. Okay, version B is to bring the right knee out, the left leg straight back, and then you're leaning forward into pigeon pose. The bolster and the sandbag makes it a little tough to push your bolster around, but you would be in this version with the right knee out. Now, if you try that and it feels like there is a little bit of possibility for you to stay with it, then I would lower down on the bolster if you can. So we can lower down on our elbows. It's a little bit more compact with the bolster this way, or you can turn it the other direction so it's wide. But consider the reach of the torso on the ribs in the front. So you're trying to kind of climb forward and feel the arch of the back. Okay, it's likely to be kind of a little spicy in that right thigh. It's definitely a 4-star on that one, isn't it? Maybe it's more, I'm not sure, probably more. Now, those of us that are in the version with our foot on the bolster, I just want to let you know we will be coming back to a reaching pose with both hips. So you might be coming back into this version for a few seconds to connect the dots. But those of us that are in the pigeon version, give it a few more moments. If you want to move over to the top left corner of your space with your bolster. You can lean to the left and kind of launch into your hip. No sand on the hip though for the pigeon pose. No place to really put it, huh? You know, as we come back, so if you have your foot on the bolster, you're going to be coming back with us somehow. You're going to come back to hands, knees pattern. But then if you're in pigeon, you just center your hands wide onto the mat or your elbows. And you're going to move back. Now remember, if you push back, and this is tough on the wrist, you can do other things where you can hold the sides of your mat. And then you're going to alternate bending your knees, walk out through the calves. Feel your feet wide apart, right? They're not too wide stance. You can't do a really wide stance here like you did with your feet on the ground sitting down. But feel when you push back. It's kind of interesting to hold the sides of the mat, I must admit. It's kind of good. I like that. Now, when you push back, lift up the hips, try to keep the tailbone moving up, let the side ribs lengthen. And then come down to your knees and forward into upward facing dog. So as I lean forward, I have my ribs stretching. And it's nice to know that the hands are only a temporary part of this version today. So I lower down my body on the bolster. And then I keep my arms in this challenging pose, which is a chaturanga pose, which is something we only really do with our bolster in this group. And so I do find this is a little upper body challenge. So keep your elbows in by your sides, lengthen the front spine. So you have your head lifting. We're still there. Hands open, lift up the chest, breathe, inhale. And then exhale, come back to table. And then shift your pigeon pose. So we're going to shift to that other side, left leg, okay, forward, knee open. Sit back onto your blanket. And if you're using this as your version, you can have your hands on the bolster, you can tuck your bolster in and lower down onto it, and maybe turn your head to the side. Those that are not taking pigeon are going to take a seat on the blanket, cross-legged, left foot in front on top of the bolster. Place your sand on the ankle and be sure that you're on one or two blankets that you're sitting onto. So a blanket stack under your seat could be useful, and then hands on the blocks and move forwards. Yeah, articulate the sensation to the left hip. Yeah, this one feels pretty good. I like both. This is, to me, is two different ways of doing this hip opener of pigeon. So this is a little more of a seated version, but I guess they're both seated poses, but different situation for some people in the knee joint here. It's not as closed. But if it doesn't hurt you and you want to practice the pigeon pose, go for it. You gotta use it or lose it, right? In some ways. If it works okay, keep going with it. It's not broken. So lean into the version that you're in. If you are in the seated version, well, with a foot on the bolster, be a little careful how it pulls up your hip, right? It's going to move this hip joint slightly up if you just center on your lower back, the awareness there. So you do want to use some support under your hands to go forwards. If you're in the pigeon pose, you're probably going to move your bolster to the right, I assume, okay? And this will be kind of our final movement pattern. We're going to really slow it when we get to the wall right after this. So if you're wanting to squirm around or do some sun salutes or something, this is your time to do that. And as you lean to that right side or to the front, feel the extension of the back leg. Notice what's interesting in your hip here. And let your head lower down. Breathing. Now as we move back into center, I think you all have a little wall space to explore finding your way towards. So when you come out of the shape, you're going to be seated. Okay, and then we'll take our body, our bolster and blanket and sand to a wall space. So if you come out of this pose, you need to shake out the legs so you have some evenness through the kind of tissue tundra. Boatman is always good, a little bit of tapping. You get good at some boatman if you do this for a while. Usually if you shake your legs and you tap, it kind of works better than if you keep the legs still and then you tap. Never tried that. Not a real rhythm person, but I certainly live with someone who does that for a living, it seems. Musical and so forth. So when I got the bolster to the wall's edge, we put the bolster horizontal, and then we have props everywhere. So have your blankie, have your sand nearby. Okay, so when you are getting your body to flip, you want to feel your back to the wall. And you know, I find sometimes the knees can be a little bit of a tenderness on this one when you push them back. So it's your seat and what's above your seat, right? That's really what you're working to get down. So your legs don't have to get really compact to get here, but you've got to kind of push back your body to one side of the bolster, and then you want to roll. So find different ways of coming up that are less tough on the knees here. And maybe none of you have any issue with it. Yeah, I know there's a couple of you that like to use a belt on this around the legs. So if you want to belt up the legs. Have you ever tried brain float with this version? Anyone tried brain float with this? You can have your belt on your feet and then to your occiput. I've never seen that taught, so maybe there's a reason. Okay, so I'm not going to design something like those. So, okay, so we place our sand with trust at our feet. And then when you move your legs up, yeah, resistance is half of this one, right? It's going to be resistance to get there. So when you select that movement, I know some of you have many sandbags, so you might put a sandbag on your ribs. If you have many, you would just use them. I just don't want to demonstrate a bunch of sand on me because some people might not have that. That's not fair. So you do what you find what you have. But with this arch, if you really punch into it and you have like you're celebrating that emphasizing energy, you know, like I can do it, look at me, kind of energy in your nervous system. This might be a good one since it's about calming the nervous system, to get on that bolster and then try to smooth out, not trying to push the arch further, but to smooth from the tailbone, touching the bolster, and then purposely let the belly soften. Intra-abdominal pressure is easing. And then from that space through the back of the pelvis, through the ribs, open the elbows out, take cactus pose, and then relax the weight in the brain, the weight of looking with your eyes, and let your eyes relax. If you have an eye pillow, use it. I haven't mentioned that at all during these actually. And that's something that is kind of missing. And for some of us, maybe this is a good time to put even a little towel across the eyes, or at least close the lids. So you got your little eye pillows already part of you. Let your feet find a comforted balance with the sand. and come into the breath pace, as lyrical as a breath is. Can you return to that focus of the diaphragm descending but ascending the abdomen, and then exhaling, the diaphragm ascends towards the heart and the belly descends. Listening to your breath, taking it easy. Spreading some seeds in the body for neutralizing and cultivating calm. Now, this Viparita Karani pose, reverse action, is a pose that we take time to rest the organs from gravity's downward pull. So we can feel the legs, the adductors, the flush of the lymph. And it is kind of a subtle awareness of that flush, but it certainly is a different interaction internally than some of your daily experiences with your body, feet down, brain up. Right? It is a variety to spice it up. So I suggest you bend your knees, and as you bring your feet away from the wall, keep control with the leg musculature as you start to guide your thighs towards your ribs. And certainly you can move the sand away any way you please. Okay? Feel your knees and let the knees stay so they're still in that simple pattern apart. I want to keep it this direction in case, because we've done enough external rotation, find a good balance with the legs. Okay? And then guide the back of the pelvis so it scoops. And then you can roll to the side, but if you prefer to slide back, that's okay. Some people would maybe want to try something a little different. Slide back, instead of rolling, and maybe take a moment here with your feet at the wall and get that back nice and centered. And then you can decide to come around and up when you're ready. And if you do end up staying in this position past the time, you can always bring your feet then to Baddha Konasana at the bolster. So an idea if you decide not to come up and sit. So rolling for those of us coming up to sit for a few together. Take a blankie, or if you want to sit back at the wall with your bolster under your seat, that can be really nice for your back. It's just different for your spine and your connection to have the wall behind you. Some it's good, some we're going to come to the center. So let's find a position of reach of our core into the heart layer, and feel when your eyes come into maybe awareness of the screen and maybe awareness of the collective, because we are sharing the practice, even though it's a pretty solo practice, yoga is, right? Even if you're in a class of others, it's a real internal private practice. So home practice is really nice to have now under your belt. Let your hands slide on the legs and merge the palms, gradually lowering your brain to relax at the open heart, feeling the connectivity through breath, through intention of receiving wellness and supporting each other in our practice. Inhale, and with an exhalation, bowing into your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Thank you.